Haron Matwetwe is a friend of mine. I got to know him a number of years ago when I was doing my master's, and he was doing his PhD coursework. I spent a lot of good class time with him that I enjoyed. But he's a native of Kenya, married to Deborah, and they have 3 children. He's served in a variety of kinds of positions. He's served as an elementary school teacher, as a pastor, and he's worked as a nurse. And currently, he's in the dissertation phase of his PhD studies here at Andrews with an emphasis in missions, and he's working on a dissertation on Pokot cultural worldview and its implications on Adventist witness. And I'm guessing the presentation today is somewhat connected to that overall research project. So thank you, Haron. Time is yours.
Thank you so much, Brother Andrew. Good afternoon. It's evening. Before I begin my presentation, I just want to let you know that I'm passionate about the Nomads, and personally, I've been a nomad before, although I was not born a nomad, but I'm very passionate about them. In my earlier Christian experience, I was dealing with the Nomads, though we didn't get to understand them fully. And that's part of the reason why my studies are based on the nomadic people. The paper I'm presenting is still working. I'm still working on it. And therefore, I would like you to give humble and kind comments at the end, knowing that it's a work that is in progress. Reaching out and discipling believers from a nomadic background is a continual challenge in the mission world. Research indicates that the majority of itinerant people, such as the pastoralists, are still unreached or least reached and are generally unresponsive to Christian influences. Although migration in search of pastures and water for animals is a barrier for fruitful witness and discipleship, and familiarity with the nomadic culture and the worldviews is considered a major contributor to the ineffective witness among them. For instance, the estimated 2/3 of the world's population, that is over 4 billion, who include nomadic communities, communicate primarily through oral methods such as stories, songs, proverbs, sayings, drama, dances. And yet, 90% of Christians working among this vast majority are from literary backgrounds, relying on communication styles with which they are accustomed, but are foreign to the nomads. This missional challenge necessitates a study of cultural context of individual communities, focusing on their cultural and communication methods in order to facilitate a more meaningful, sustainable, and vibrant ministry among them. The Pokot of Western Kenya and Eastern Uganda are one among many pastoral groups in the East African region without a significant Christian presence. In summer 2014, I conducted a qualitative research in the region to collect data that enabled me to better understand their cultural worldview, which will assist in the planning and implementation of appropriate witness. The research involved interviews with the Pokot elders, participant observation, and dialogue with informants. Literature review on the Pokot also aided in ascertaining essential information and the facts about the community. I had some pictures here which I wanted to, just as an eye-opener to the people I'm talking about. This was part of the research that I was doing. It's a group of the Pokot, and these are the dancers. They heard that I was coming to the community to do some research, and they came. Very generous people, very sociable, and so they came just to pose with me to take some pictures. I'm holding a stick over there that is indicative of their culture. Once you come to the community, they will make you part and parcel of the community. and the only sign that they do is to give you that stick that you have become one of them. That's another picture there. I'm placed at the center of the group, again as a sign of good relation with them. At the end of some activities, they welcome you to dance with them. They usually sing and dance around. They welcome you to dance with them. And within a few minutes, I was able to make some moves. This is one of the elders. He has a leopard skin on his neck, showing that he has some authority over other people. Whoever has that leopard snake, he has some authority in the group. We were on our way with the informants to one of the elders' home whom we were going to interview. And when the elder heard that we were coming, he had to go ahead of us to his homestead so he can prepare his homestead because there are visitors who were coming to his place. This is one of the houses which has been left vacant because the owners have already moved with the animals to far areas and they will be back after several months. So it had been just left vacant. That is the house which they gave me. No, I'm joking. That is one of the houses which is being occupied with some young people of that homestead. Then you will always find the pockets seated together in a group because the sun usually is very hot. So they will sit together in a group during the day and then so to cool the body temperature. This is a homestead which has been left by nomads. They have moved to another place again. And that one there is a group of elders. We were seated together, listening to stories. I was asking about their origin, and they were able to narrate on their stories about their origin. This picture was taken at the end of my research. The whole community came to see me off. All members of that village had to come and bid me a farewell. This is one of the pictures also during the farewell with my informants. And then the last one was a dance which they organized to see me off, and they had me to participate in it. And I don't know how to go to the video itself now. We'll just watch it for a few minutes. Okay. All right.
Lenda ya jilenda Haron. Kaya unai wile Nairobi, ini kiwe wile ngambo, ini wile Musoma. Lenda ya Haron. Lenda inyor Musoma, inyor degree. Muna, ono, ngambo, away, jamai, dororot, kogotu, ne, degree. Haron. Ketana, Haron, Matwetwe, Katina, Pibu, Artasi, Yagara, Kabaita, Asia, Onna, Kenya, Edoro, Haron, Edoro, Inyor, Katina, Mampo, Kenya, Machar, Inyor, Machar, Katina, Degree, Yamuna, Onna, Mambo, Baka, Onna, Nairobi, Muka, Chebu, Yorju, Mambo, Hello, Itoin, Yopa, Kenya, Asia, Jamai, Tororo, Inimida, Ayum, Muka, Onion, Robanai, Aye, Robanai, Edenaye, Nuko, Kore, Masters, Masters, Nyoru,
PhD. Ada doctorate ay.
Nyor, Masters, Nyor, Peisha, Nyorki, Onna, Olete, Yagaram. Nyor, Degree, Wawai, Yotina, Lakau, Gongwa, Arias, Gongwa, Aboy, Tigile, Asile, Opa, Kaede, Toru, Atina, Moninge, Yete, Toru, Atina, Moninge, Yete, Serra, Yoko, Munna, Onna, Hiro, Wani, Wana, Lakau, Lende ya kwa wajara bajete ya jile, wabu beni ya jide ya aluka katina wabu aluka, Andram, Lachir, Katina, Amba, Kenya, Serra, Yoko, Yondi, Serra, Haron.
Yeah, that went on and on. It's a long story, but the song or the utterances which the elder is mentioning here is trying to wish me the best of luck in my studies. He couldn't be able to say PhD, so he kept saying master's, which was more easy and familiar to him. The other aspect of this song, which they were wishing me a safe travel to Nairobi, and then they also wished me to go back to Kenya so that I can work among them. The only way they send off people is by singing, eating together, and doing that kind of stuff, which are very unusual in our experiences. So who are these Pokot? The Pokot are a part of a larger group, the Kalenjin, who speak a similar language, which is called Nandi. They are settled in western Pokot and the Baringo counties of Kenya, and also in the Mudati district of Uganda. Other members can be found in urban centers where they do manual jobs to supplement family income. The West Pokot County estimates that there are about 700,000 of these Pokots in the county alone, while those of Uganda and those living in the urban centers, their population is largely unknown because of their frequent movement. However, some mission research groups like the Joshua Project estimate that there are about 1 million of Pokot people in Eastern African region. Culturally, these people are related to other groups like the Karamojong in Uganda, the Turkana of northern Kenya, and the Maasai of Eastern Africa, whom they are believed to have descended from. Through close association with these groups, they share similar traditional customs and practices, such as the rites of passage and the belief in ancestral spirits, which are manifest in every stage of life. Even though external influences and the pressure from Western education, modern technology, threaten traditional customs and practices, the Pokot have managed to maintain a relatively conservative cultural identity, which is characterized by celebrations and rituals. Life transitions and occasions of planting, harvesting, war, tragedy, or traditional religious practices are often accompanied with songs, dances, and chanting. Like most pastoral communities, the Pokot communicate primarily through proverbs, through stories, songs, riddles, and dances, just as you witnessed. Information is stored, it is relayed and shared through oral means, and the instructions and the teaching to younger people is given through orally. Values of obedience, humility, respect, sharing, kindness are given through songs and the proverbs. The proverbs maintain cultural values according to Paul Hibbert. Among the Pokot, proverbs illustrate or convey important lessons. Clan elders apply proverbs extensively to rebuke, to shame, and discourage bad behaviors, or to warn young people from straying away from moral paths. They are also quoted skillfully during council meetings as a sign of eloquence and good oratory skills. One of the proverbs which I liked, which was given while I was there, which I just learned, says, "Do not burn or prepare 2 walking sticks at the same time." That resounds to the biblical injunction in the book of Proverbs, or in the New Testament, the book of Matthew, chapter 6, verses 24, which says the wisdom, which says, you cannot serve how many masters? You cannot serve 2 masters. In Pokot, they say, "Molupe, chi, amon, ondeng." Do not burn 2 sticks at the same time, because one will get spoiled. Stories also communicate important lessons for daily living. The elders usually are the ones commissioned to tell stories in Pokot. They admonish young people to be imaginative, to be careful, to be sensible, and morally upright. Most of the stories are narrated at the family circles, in the field during celebrations, or when tending animals. I don't have enough time to give you some of the stories which were told, but one story here which is commonly told by using just natural illustrations talks of one animal, the rabbit. It's a common story which is being told by young people in seclusion camps, that one time the rabbit was walking in the evening, and then it came across a lion. Immediately, the rabbit sensed the danger and told the lion, "Please, I'm too small for you to eat me. Come, I will give you a bigger meat." And so the lion followed the rabbit into a pond which was filled by frogs. The rabbit took a guitar and began dancing, saying, "Oh, our animals of the forest, our animals of the mountains, eyes big and small, come and see the wonders here. Come and see by your own eyes." Many animals ran and gathered around the pond. The storyteller says at the end, the rabbit then signaled the lion and said, "Hey, select the big one," as I end the music. As the song was ending, lion grabbed a zebra, and all the animals, including the rabbit, ran away. The story is narrated to young people to teach them the lesson of not being treacherous or be aware of treachery in the community. In the same way, we have songs and riddles. Riddles are mostly applied by storytellers to children to sharpen their thinking and imagination. Children use riddles among themselves when looking after animals or playing at home. One of the riddles which is often given says, "Uncle's water were cut or stopped from flowing." The response of this song surprisingly talks about the Red Sea, which indicates that the Pokot people, who are believed to have originated from southern Sudan following the Nile River, happen to have an understanding or some kind of knowledge about Israel crossing the Red Sea. The state of Christianity in Pokot. Although Christianity has been in existence among the Pokot since the early 1930s, when the Anglican Church of Kenya opened some mission stations over there, church growth and development is still very minimal. Adventist work began in the early 1980s among the Pokot, using health, education, and preaching as the main strategies. So far, the church has managed to build a few schools and a clinic. Global mission pioneers and the involvement of relief activities have also contributed to ministry work among the Pokot. However, majority of these people still practice traditional religious beliefs, which include a belief in ancestral spirits, a belief in a god called Tororot, and the works of magic and witchcraft. Churches are non-existent in some parts, and the few churches that are located in urban centers are without pastoral care. The survival and the strength of these few existing congregations necessitates appropriate discipleship and the mobilization of believers so that they are properly equipped to reach their fellow nomads. Principles for discipling oral communicators. According to the Lausanne Committee of 2004, the goal of discipling oral communicators is to identify what they need to know, what they need to do, and how to communicate these truths in appropriate methods. This presupposition is rooted in the mandate to make disciples of all nations, which is calling believers from all cultural backgrounds, including oral communicators, to make disciples of their own people. The question then to be asked is, how can believers from oral and nomadic backgrounds be discipled into mature Christians who are able to witness to others when the gospel presented to them is prepackaged in Western forms, a written Bible, a permanent house of worship, a church hymnal? Can oral believers be able to relay the gospel to others in a culturally appropriate way and still ensure that the message and life of the disciples remain biblically faithful? Challenges associated with discipling believers using oral methods are real and cannot be dismissed. Although discipleship ensures that the gospel message is reproducible and sustainable in successful generations, this goal still remains a challenge to overcome in oral contexts, since modern expressions of Christianity is suitable for oral literate and settled people. Most missiologists and church planters agree that oral approaches, such as chronological Bible storying, may be useful during the initial stages of witnessing, but do not guarantee sustainable discipleship among the second, third, and successful generations. In spite of these challenges, three factors: the composition of the Bible, Christ's method of discipleship, and the missiological principles for cross-cultural ministry offer a framework to support a conclusion that oral communicators can hear, can understand, and can reproduce the gospel in the way literary methods have been able to do. The biblical composition. In his argument in favor of communicating the gospel through stories, Tom Stephan indicates that 70% of the Bible is a story, or it is a portion filled with stories. 15% of the Bible is poetry, while 10% is what we are usually inclined to, abstracts. Stories dominate biblical literature, followed by poetry, which encompasses songs, lamentations, and proverbs. This assessment of Scripture indicates that in spite of the emphasis on the 10% of literalism of Scripture that characterize modern theology, God has in the past communicated in a more simplified manner through narratives, discipling others to follow Christ and become his messengers using oral methods is therefore possible and be more productive, and that orality is not a barrier to knowing God or telling others about Him, but a strength to be considered. Number 2, Christ's method of discipleship. Concerning Christ's method of discipleship, Ellen White admonishes Christians throughout all generations. Christ's method alone will give true success in reaching the people. The Savior mingled with men as one who desired their good. He showed his sympathy for them, ministered to their needs, and won their confidence. The frequent application of this statement in support of incarnational ministries among those in need cannot be disputed. However, Christ's method of witnessing and discipling was more than attending to the physical needs alone. His style of instructing followers whom he won their confidence and were willing not only to follow him, but were also ready to witness about him, is equally implied. Tom Stephan writes, Jesus never wrote a theology book, yet he taught whenever he went. As a holistic thinker, Jesus often used the parables. He used the stories to teach the audience into reflecting on new ways of thinking about life. As Jesus' listeners wrestled with the new concepts introduced through parables, they were challenged to examine traditions, form new images, and transform their behavior. Stories pushed the people to encounter God and change. Missiological principles. Since communication is an integral component of witnessing and discipleship, cross-cultural principles of communication have been developed to guide mission work within the various cultures of humanity. And I was going to end with these 3 basic principles. Number 1, the gospel has to be incarnated. Number 2, Christian witnesses should be mindful and respectful of social structures. And number 3, the recommendations of the Lausanne Conference, the Lausanne Committee of the 2004 should be adhered to and followed in terms of communicating with the oral communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Haron, for that presentation. We have about 10 minutes for questions. As he's going back, I'm going to ask one myself.
Yes.
I've written and published that the Western theological world needs to be much more aware of what's being talked about in other parts of the world. And we have a situation in the United States where literacy is actually going down. It's not that people are illiterate, but their level of literacy is much less because of the use of technology and so on. Is it possible that somehow we could start trying to work towards getting people in the West to learn from a tribal group such as the Pokot? Is that just totally unrealistic? Or how, in learning how to tell stories? Because they've obviously done this for a lot longer than most people.
Does he want to respond?
No.
Okay. One of the recommendations which has been given, by the way, from the Lausanne Conference is for the seminaries like Andrews to train missionaries in orality. Yeah, and I think it is one of those forgotten areas, like I mentioned in the paper. 70% of the Bible is a narrative. These are stories. But I think, again, the development of theology has gone to the other areas where we are concentrating on abstract truths and dwelling on them than the greater portion of the Bible. So I think it will need to change. It will need a change of the worldview of the Western world, which, with its perceptions that it is the ultimate and everything, it will need a change. But I think it's a high time that our schools, probably we will start with our schools, and then we can move on to the rest of the world.
Asante Sana. I want to congratulate you. You are probably the 3rd Adventist to address this topic, in writing at least. That's not many. I'm one of the 3.
Thank you.
and I haven't done much. I appreciate what you've said. My question would relate to the possible relationship between orality and screen communication. Because around the world, even in oral societies, more people today are getting their information from screens in front of themselves. Our tablets, our cell phones,
Yes, yes.
what have you.
Yes.
Have you seen any material that relates to orality in terms of screen communication?
Philip, one of the people who have been engaged with mission to the Nomads, writes about the necessity of using mass media, films, in reaching the nomadic people. And the assumption here is that oral people learn not only through oral things, but also through sight. They model people. When missionaries, there's another part which I could not be able to reach, they model people by looking at people like how they live. And there was one issue here which was saying that when missionaries go to the oral communities or the nomadic people for that reason, they needed to live authentic Christian lives because they are being observed, they are being watched. And these oral people, they want to emulate what they have seen in the lives of the missionaries. So to some extent, there is that possibility of the connection between orals and the screens, and the films can be one of those ways in which we can be able to reach these nomadic people. Once you announce, for example, among the Pokot that there will be a movie somewhere, they will come. They will really come to listen and watch the stuff.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
When you talk about nomads, you are referring to the specific tribe, sort of. But I know I grew up in East Europe, gypsies.
Yes.
Some of them are still nomads. Is there any similarities? Did you run into in your research into any correlations?
Yes. Again, as I said, this is still a work in progress, but it's going to be part of my dissertation. Again, I've included that portion of it in the dissertation. Nomadic people are in all the continents of the world. We have them in Iraq, we have them in Australia, we have them in Eastern Europe, as you mentioned. You know, even within the US, we have nomads, a kind of nomads, not pastoralists. But when you talk about, you know, somebody was arguing like these people who go trekking with the trucks. They leave home and for the rest of 2 weeks, they are not home. That's actually a nomadic life. So there are various types of nomads. They may not be pastoralists as the Pokot, but nomadism is spread throughout the world. We just need to find out how to reach those specific groups of nomads.
Thank you for your topic. That leaves me with another question. Do we send enough missionaries from here to nomadic lands to observe, to live among them? Question one. Question two, do you think we extrapolate enough from foreign countries when we go there? Is it a greater or lesser percentage due to the fact that we're bringing our Western culture to impose on them rather than learning and taking from their culture?
I think I will start with number two, in terms of when we live here and go. It is a mindset among most missionaries that we are taking God to these people. But there is also a truth that sometimes God can take us to these people so we can learn about God in a better way. Some of the values of these people are just humbling. You know, they practice Christianity in a disguise. I mean, they are just there. When you talk about the generosity, the humility, the respect of elders, we struggle with it in our, in our world. So sometimes God can send us there to go and learn about God. But when we live here, we feel we are going to take God to them when actually people are doing. It's another way, I think it's a need for us to change our worldview or our mindset as missionaries. The first question was regarding, I think somebody needs to do that kind of research as to how many people really are going to these fields to study or to work among the nomads. As Adventists, it's a place that we are struggling with. I think we are more focused. Like now, I think from the General Conference, our focus has been in cities. Rarely do we address the needs of these tribal people who are still there and who needs to be reached. Somebody has to do a study. I'm not sure of the percentage, but just for the case of the Pokot, because I was there, I mentioned that they don't have pastoral care. I was asking the informant who happened to be a student of theology in Uganda, and he told me that there are some church members who have not been able to participate in the Holy Communion for 3 years because nobody can reach where they are. So that tells you, like, it's a big challenge in terms of ministry. Is my time over?
Yeah. We still have one more question. I have a question if no one else has one. If any, I know seminaries, a few seminary students might be here, anyone who's interacted with Jacques Ducan, Dr. Ducan, he often says, and he's referring to the Old Testament, Pentateuch and so on, he says, that was not written to be read. It was basically written to be memorized, in a sense.
Yes.
I wonder, of course, we can't go and chant Hebrew anywhere, except maybe Israel, but how much kind of creative translation can we do when we go to a culture and we want them to have scripture? Mm-hmm. If we were to just translate ideas, that's one thing, but to make something memorable, to be able to memorize it, there are certain techniques to that. Yes. How much freedom do we have when we translate to get the idea of the Bible should be there, but at the same time it should be in such a way that it can be memorized, especially in oral cultures.
Yeah. That is the challenge right there when you talk about the Old Testament. Stories were told at the fireplace while the people were walking. That is the structure of the Old Testament. I think one presenter here talked about it, narratives in the Old Testament they were given. And this is the worldview of people like this one. The challenge which is there, as I mentioned, is it possible that after retelling of these stories to the second and the third generation, they will still be telling the same story? There could be some variations there. So how can we still remain biblically sound? And I mentioned a part which I also didn't get to was the issue of critical contextualization. We needed to know exactly how we are telling this. Which stories from the community can we choose to introduce the gospel, which can become like bridges? And when it comes to chronological Bible story, which is one of the methods now of talking to the oral communities, we needed to see how to arrange the stories of the Bible in a way that they can be retold. And once that has been rearranged like that, one writer says that it helps to create a biblical worldview because people are able to remember. But again, it's another science which needs some study in it.